To the system, I don't wanna be a slave. I've been doing shit my way, or the highway. And in the driveway is a nice range. Cause I grind through the climb, I invite pain. You'll never hear me, bitch, nah, I don't complain. Just gotta flip the switch and you can go and obtain anything you want, anything you need. Your mind's got the key ingredient, it's belief. They deceive with the negativity, but I just slide right by that energy. Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go.
What's going on? Welcome back again to the Gallop Out. I'm your host, Ryan. That's my co-host, Jackson Muniz. My voice is going to be gone by the end of today, but we're having too much fun. We got to keep this thing rolling. We just got off with Matt Dinnerman. Prior to that was Eric DeCosta racing Rachel McLaughlin from Indy. And now we get to be joined by someone that, Jackson, you and I had, we'd always planned to all hang out, and we finally got to do so in Keeneland, and she is fucking hilarious. So not only is she funny, but she's also an excellent handicapper. You see her on America's Day at the Races, Big Fox Shoes on Travers Day over with NYRA. It is Megan Burgess. Megan, what's up?
Hi guys, how are you? It's good to see you again after our fun at Keeneland. That was a fun day.
It was a fun
Apparently,
day.
I made a good impression. I'm so excited.
Not bad.
You did, and I think safe to say, as good of an impression as you made on us, I think the best impression you made was on Chris Couples, who it is not easy to make that guy bust up laughing, but
it was a fun day.
Good job of that.
It was a really good day.
It was a good day.
Absolutely.
It looked like you had something to say. No? Okay. As good of a day as that was, we have two really good days coming up on Friday and Saturday. Breeders' Cup Juvenile Day, Future Stars Friday, this Friday on Halloween, and then into Breeders' Cup Saturday, Championship Saturday. Today, the three of us are going to be talking about the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, and the Breeders' Cup Classic, of course. And I'm really looking forward to the Breeders' Cup Classic. You guys will understand why when we get there. I'm sure we'll have some fun and fiery debates as that race gets a little bit closer.
We already did. Yeah. It'd be
we
great.
already did, yes. We already started off hot, and we knew that we had to continue it here. So we're going to start with the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. It's going to be run on Friday, going as race number 7. All right, post positions are out. Morning lines are out. Meg, how did you see this race? You have a lot of contenders from the East Coast coming in. It's maybe not the deepest field, but I think all the horses are pretty evenly matched.
I do too. You know, Tommy Joe is a filly that was highly regarded over the summer at Saratoga, and then she kind of disappointed me last time out at Keeneland. And, you know, as she won her races at Saratoga, I really thought she was going to be a filly that was going to improve with distance, and she didn't do that last time out. And she was kind of one of those horses that we thought was going to be pretty heavy as a favorite in this group. I don't see it as much anymore. The number 1 Iron Orchard is another filly coming from the East Coast, a horse that I got to really watch develop over the summer at Saratoga, and I think that she has every chance in the world to take another step forward in this race. I think that she could very well give you a little bit of a healthy price. She's 6-1 on the morning line, which made me like her even more. And last time out, I thought she ran a great race in the Frizette. You know, she had speed. There was a lot of speed in the race. They went fast. I thought Riley Toll ran a good race in there as well, being up on that pace and managing to hold on as she did. I thought she ran a fantastic race. But this filly, Joel Rosario, last time out, he retains them out. I think that he did play that pace well and was able to kind of utilize her kind of coming more off of it, knowing that they were going to go quickly as they did. It was also her first time stretching out, so she was able to kind of show a new dimension. I thought she ran very well in that race, and I think she's going to be tough coming back in this race. But it's pretty interesting. A stat that I found crazy was Todd Pletcher's 0 for 19 with starters in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Bob Baffert has a couple of horses in there as well. He's only won this race twice, and while Bottle of Rouge looks to be one of the choices, he has not been able, I don't believe he's been able to win this with the Phillies stretching out in distance for the first time, as Bottle of Rouge does. So that's kind of a big question mark with her. She drew off to win two back, but I kind of have some distance questions with her. I wouldn't take her at a short price, to be completely honest with you. She doesn't just rattle me by any means. I'm not, she, she's just not she's not a Philly that I think she could very much surprise me. I kind of had the same take on Citizen Bowl last year, and look what he did, but I just don't trust her very much. If I was going to take a price in this field, it would probably actually be the number three. I think she's incredibly interesting as a long shot play for Mike McCarthy. And listen, she's got a lot. I think if she takes a pretty solidified step forward, she's a beautifully bred daughter of gun runner. Jose climbs aboard her. He's actually, as we saw with journalism, he's on many horses for Mike McCarthy over the weekend. But I think she's incredibly interesting as a long shot play. But I'll hold off. I'll let y'all get. I haven't actually talked about my top selection yet, but I'm interested to see how y'all feel about this race. I thought Percy's Bar obviously ran incredibly well despite the DQ last time out. And yeah, I think this is a race where you could certainly get away with finding a little bit of a price in.
Your turn.
My turn. I was muted. I don't disagree with that at all. In terms of meaning at a price, you also mentioned Todd Pletcher, who obviously has some big, high end contenders in here. He is 0 for 19 in this race. Bottle of Rouge, who I did like. I was doing some deep dives on some stats as well, and I did see that Bob Baffert is 0 for when trying to stretch out in this race. He's also 0 for trying to stretch out in the boys, going futurity into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. So oddly enough, for a trainer who has strong stats everywhere, this not being one of his strong suits, I think says a lot. You brought up a live long shot and meaning, because that last work on October 24th over the Del Mar track was very smart, and a very quick one at that for this 2-year-old filly stretching out. And I mean, why not, right? This is a filly clearly bred to like the two turns. She debuted going 6.5 at Los Al, and that stretch is no joke. And now getting that added distance, I feel like she's going to be able to stretch her legs a little bit more, and nobody else really scares me. I did have a question for you before I turn it over to Jackson to talk about this race, and that's with the rail horse Iron Orchard. That day that the Frizette was run on, same day as Napoleon Solo, when we saw him run off in a blazing that track was so fast that day. So the times, maybe we're not going to see that exact time run back in this event. That being said, though, it was a day that favored a lot of front runners, especially, we saw the likes of Napoleon Solo kind of draw off. What do you think that kind of adds to, like, maybe upgrades that performance from Iron Orchard, on top of the fact that she showed the ability to do something new when she was just a speed dominant horse in those first two starts? She all of a sudden got taken back and showed a lot of professionalism, I thought.
I mean, you guessed it. I think that it was, I feel like as far as the rail and as far as the track played, it was kind of a unique weekend. Napoleon Solo won that race, and then obviously they aren't deciding they didn't want to, he was a bounce back candidate. It was just kind of a weird situation that day. I think it was pretty reasonably fair. I mean, listen, I think she ran well. I'm not gonna. I mean, horses did well when they used speed, but at the same time, I think the biggest thing that drives me home with her isn't necessarily the track, but necessarily how she was able to sit back and make a run. And I think that that's key for 2-year-olds, kind of, especially when they're trying to rate and learn how to go a route of ground and all of those different things. And she's been able to put some pieces together in a way that I've loved to see. And while she definitely has to take another step forward, I loved what I saw as far as the rail draw. I mean, I think she'll be able to sit back, and she'll have enough tactical speed to be there in the pocket. Joel is going to have to find a way to get her out of there, and I think he's going to be able to do so. She drew from the inside and used speed on her debut. Obviously, it's going to be a different trip. I like her in this spot. I didn't pick her on top, but I am, an East Coast homer. But at the same time, I like her in this race. I think she's going to run well. I have a couple of questions if she's going to be able to take another step forward. We'll see. But I like her a lot. As far as, I do want to get your take on Tommy Joe, because this horse, to me, my biggest concern with her is the distance. I thought over the summer at Saratoga, she's been working really well. I mean, she just put 47 and 4. She was the fastest of 29 at Saratoga. It seems that she hasn't missed a beat since her performance in the Alcibiades. But my issue with her is that she just never looked comfortable in the running of that race completely. She was kind of early. She just traveled so beautifully at Saratoga in both of her races. And in the early stages of the Alcibiades, she kind of got keen. She was a little green in that race. She just didn't look as comfortable throughout the running of that race, especially early if you go back and watch it, as she was when she was running at Saratoga. All that aside, she just didn't look like she wanted to get the distance in the end. I mean, Percy's Bar was winning that race. Even she did get DQ'd, but it never looked like Tommy Joe was gonna be able to make it up and beat her that day. And I have some serious concerns. But at the same time, also thinking about that race, she didn't look comfortable as she did it, and she didn't look like she was moving as well early as she did in her past races at Saratoga. So I'm not ready to write her off just yet. Her dam, though, her dam
Walking up.
really was a 7/8 miler type distance, and you'll watch here as we play it back for you. I think it's interesting if you zoom in the early part of this race. There you can see where the contact was made, and Percy's Bar, obviously, it was pretty overt. I think it was the right thing to do to take her down. But as far as Tommy's Joe catching up to her, I didn't feel that she was going to. Um, at the same time, these are 2-year-olds. Demanding perfection is absolutely absurd, in my opinion. I think that, she could easily take another step forward off of that race. I don't think she's dead in the water now that didn't win that race, but I just don't think she looks the same as she did in Saratoga. I'm hopeful that maybe she can, maybe she can redeem off of that race. But the biggest question for me is the distance, and I'm hoping that she can settle in a little bit better and kind of travel as she did over the summer at Saratoga.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the points you made, and one of them being that she might be one of those horses that maybe runs her best races at Saratoga, which is not something that we're not used to seeing. We see that a lot. There's a lot of horses that when they get up to the spa, it's some rejuvenating fountain of youth. It must be that Saratoga spring water where they are just running so comfortably, and they love that track up there. And then they go elsewhere and they still run well, but maybe not to that A+ caliber. And to the last race in the Darley Alcibiades, that Keeneland's a little wonky with the mile and a 16th and that first wire finish. You kind of have to make that move around the turn. It's maybe a little bit unique in that sense, but even so, it did not look like Tommy Joe wanted to go by Percy's Bar whatsoever. We didn't see that same professionalism that we saw from her up at the spa. Mm-hmm. Jackson, I'll turn it to you. Your thoughts on Tommy Joe, and then go ahead and take us to your top contender in this race.
No, I agree with Megan. I remember watching the race early on. I either turned to you or to Noah, and I remember saying she just doesn't look very comfortable right now. Like she's already in trouble. And this was with 6 furlongs to go. She just didn't look like she was traveling as well as she did at Saratoga. I wonder if she's a little bit like Dorth Bader in that she just doesn't want to be ridden as aggressively, because at Saratoga, she was a little bit further back. She wasn't on the pace. At Keeneland, it was kind of a horse race. I think they felt like they needed to go at least put some pressure on Percy's Bar. Maybe that took its toll. I just don't think she ever really ran. It wasn't like she ran her 7 furlongs and then hit a wall. I felt like she was done long before that. So I think at the price she's going to be, and I do think you're going to get every bit of the 7-2, she's worth another shot in this race with a bit of a change of tactics. It's not a huge opinion. I do think she's going to be very difficult. She'll be on my tickets. A long shot I'll give you guys. I like the 8, Super Cordera. I've always liked this horse for John Sadler. I remember betting her against Bottle Rouge at Del Mar, and I'm like, oh, this horse is going to beat her. She's going to smoke her. And I think I've texted like 10 different people about her. And she got absolutely dusted. It was terrible. She got beat by 7 lengths, but then she came back at Santa Anita. And she had a little bit of trouble early on in the race. She kind of made an early move about a quarter mile into the race. She was only like in 4th, and then split the horses, and then won like a good thing. And maybe she's just a 2-turn horse. Maybe this is what she's wanted to do all along. And the breeding will certainly suggest that she will get better with more distance. I also think it's a really good sign that I think this is a very uncharacteristic move for John Sadler to bring this horse back in 3 weeks, to throw her to the Wolves in a grade 1. And I'm not even sure this really is throwing her to the Wolves. She's only, 5 points slower than your morning line favorite Explorer. Like this is not a huge step up. If we see another progression from her from start 3 to 4, I don't see any reason why she can't be competitive against this group.
I agree completely. I think Super Corridor, a very live long shot. Another long shot I had my eyes on was right to her outside in the number 9 Lawali, 10-1 on the morning line. Seeing Flavien Prat get the mount on this is obviously eye-catching. Not saying that Freysu did anything bad. This is still a 2-year-old filly that's on the improve. I'm against Explorer in here, but just because I don't love the way that she's kind of running. She kind of has that Baffert look of a horse that maybe just hasn't faced those horses that could look her in the eye. And, I don't know what she's going to do when she gets tested. She's not a horse. I don't want a 2-year-old filly at a short price. Pretty much across the board, you have to be very, very special. But Lawali, I think, has the room for
improvement. Precise your best bet of the weekend?
Yeah, but that's a
She's
Euro on turf.
my best bet of the weekend too.
That's a Euro on turf. That doesn't apply here.
Aiden said that was one of the most special fillies that he's had. So I agree with you on Precise. Yeah.
And that's a guy who's won 28 Group 1s in a year, and he's trying to beat that on records. He's at 25 right now. So,
Put a finger down if you agree. Yeah, I like that.
I'll put all my fingers down. All the fingers are down. All that to say, Lawali, I think second route, she can certainly improve. She ran really well at Del Mar in the 7 furlong Del Mar debutante. Bottle of Rouge, obviously, got the job done there. Explorer was a close second. And Lawali, came along for third. This is one where maybe it's her time in the spotlight. She's progressed in every race. Another step forward definitely puts her right there. So I'm going to go price shopping in the Juvenile Fillies a little bit because, again, I think it's right for an upset, and I think any number of these horses could win. We saw Immersive last year win this race. Maybe not the most convincing way, but she did win it. She leveled off like a professional in there, but we were all trying to beat her in the same way where she just there weren't many standouts, and there aren't many standouts in a field of 2-year-old fillies in a race like this where we have 9 contestants. So I'm going to pick Lawali to upset the apple cart just a little bit. Megan, do you have a pick in this race, or just those overall horses that you like?
I kind of want to save my pick for this race because I am going to be in New York this weekend. So I think I do want to save my pick for this race. Even though some people might be mad at that. So maybe I should give you the pick in this race.
It's okay. The hosts of the show are not mad at you for it. So, we're really the
I kind of want to hold on to my pick for this race. So I'll give you my pick for the Juvenile, though. I will do that.
Well, we are going to move right into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and that's going to go as race number 9 on Future Stars Friday. We're obviously going the mile and a 16th for these 2-year-olds, the boys this time. Morning line favorite is To the Outside. That is the number 8, Ted Nafi, your shortest morning line price on the 2 days, I believe, at 4-5. Draws the outside for the 4th consecutive race. This one, you don't have to will this horse not to draw the rail. This horse just draws well. It would seem. Meg, we'll start the conversation with you. You got to see this one up at Saratoga come along this summer. That win in the Hopeful, he blew the doors off that competition. So what are your thoughts here? Ted Nafi obviously draws really well being outside of his main competitor, Brant.
Yeah, I was really lucky this year. When you kind of look back on all these horses that are in the Breeders' Cup, the best horses in the sport, and you realize, oh yeah, I watched them every other weekend. I was in the mornings and got to go and see them in the flesh, and I just felt so spoiled, so lucky. So I'm so thankful to be able to do that with the team I was able to do it with. And yeah, it's amazing. Kind of being able to go through these past performances and go through all these horses that I've kind of watched develop over the year, both in Kentucky and in New York. But Ted Nafi's, to me, one of the standouts of the weekend. I am going to try with the filly and the Juvenile Fillies as far as the price is concerned, but I had a really, really, really hard time beating this horse. And I think, with juveniles and 2-year-olds, you're always looking for them to get faster. You're always looking for them to improve. This horse is running figures. It's going to take a lot for one of these other horses to step up and beat him. And I don't believe Tommy Joe to be a standout in the Juvenile Fillies as far as Todd's concerned there, but I do believe Ted to be a huge standout in this race. And he just does everything so effortlessly, so beautifully. You didn't know going into the Breeders' Futurity if he was going to have that same finishing power and kick away as he did in the sprint races. It's just a completely different dynamic. And he was able to do so and just dusted those horses. And, you can make a case for Blackout Time to step up and potentially get faster and try. But at the same time, I just thought he managed himself so well. He was able to press going, short at the 7 furlongs and was just drew off of that race and able to assert himself and press and go forth. I thought it was pretty interesting with Blackout Time that they didn't send him for more speed in that race. I thought that was I disagreed with that. Especially, you don't want to be behind Ted and tried chasing a horse that's arguably the best 2-year-old in the country, is the best 2-year-old in the country. So I thought that was interesting that he didn't quite use the speed against the back-foot runner there in the Breeders' Futurity, as you'll kind of watch here at the beginning of this race. I always kind of I look at silks in these races because it drives me nuts when they're all the same saddle tail color. I can't do it. It makes my head hurt. Maybe I'm just not smart enough, but
No, you're not
anyway,
alone. No,
I can't do it. But yeah, no, I was pretty Blackout Time. I believe he's the 1 or the 2 here. My gosh. See, I told you it's the saddle tail.
Yep.
I just wish they would have used him a little bit more for some speed, and they didn't. They let the Baffert horse go, and then at the same time you can see Ted was just in cruise control. He sat beautifully off of the pace and was able to make his run. Would it have been a big difference if Blackout Time would have went? I don't think so. I think Ted was just the best horse on the day, but that was kind of my questions on the dynamics there with Blackout Time. And he used his speed to break his maiden by 9 lengths at a mile prior, so we knew he could get the distance. That's why I was so confused with how they kind of played that race. But anyway, I think that he could certainly kind of come back and use speed. He's going to have Brant to contend with as far as that's concerned. But right here, it's just when you see a horse draw, I mean, I'm just looking at this like I watched it in person. I'm looking at it again like it's the first time. He just drew off and just ran so powerfully in the end, and I think that it's just going to take a big step forward for anybody to beat him. He passed the ultimate test last time out, and I think that he's going to be a deserving favorite on the weekend.
I agree too. I think this is the most likely winner probably on Juvenile Friday. And I say that loving Precise, but Precise did draw 13. Ted Nafi drew very well. And Johnny gave the same ride to Ted Nafi as he did to Tommy Joe in the Alcibiades, at which no critique of the ride there. That's kind of right where you want to be. You want to be right up on the pace in that 2 wide kind of comfortable trip. But the way Ted Nafi, when he turned for home, just kind of switched leads, leveled off, and powered away, as you said, he did it so professionally. And that's not something you often see from the 2-year-olds. I like Blackout Time as well. That's one I'm almost looking forward to more as a 3-year-old, seeing how they develop, especially with Kenny McPeak. He really brings them along well as they get older into their 3-year-old season. And obviously the breeding on that being by Not This Time. They've won just about every stake race I could think of that went on in the past 3-4 weeks. Jackson, your thoughts on the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and our West Coast runner Brant?
Yeah, it seems like a 2-horse race, right? It feels like Brant is either going to wire this field or Ted Nafi's class is probably going to prevail. It feels like it's one or the other. I have a hard time seeing someone else upsetting this race. I do think it is a question mark for Ted, though, because he hasn't really chased a fast pace yet. You saw those races at Saratoga were both on the slower side early on. Even the Breeders' Futurity was not that fast, and Litmus Test is not even close to the ability that Brant has. And this is going to be interesting because now that Still Liberty scratched, the only other speed horse is Comport, and I'm not even sure how fast that horse is. So if Brant breaks sharp, does Johnny B go after him, or does Johnny B take 2 or 3 lengths back and let Brant have things completely his own way? So Johnny B is going to have a really tough decision I think going in that first turn. I'm curious, what would you guys prefer in that scenario? Would you prefer Ted to go after him and make this a match race, or would you let him just go and hope you have the best horse?
I think you have the best horse. I think he was right there. It wasn't as far as sprinting. Brant, to me, here's my issue with Brant. His races just don't really inspire me that he's going to be able to. I think he's going to be sent for the lead and he's going to try to go. I mean, right here you can see we'll kind of watch the replay of his last race. He's a $3 million horse. First of all, they paid $3 million for him. And he's a horse that just doesn't really stand out to me. I don't really buy into a 101 figure going 5.5 at Del Mar. I'm not going to hang my hat on that. And in this race, he got to the lead. He used that California speed. He won a race in which 2 other horses are now being scratched out of this race to make it the shortest juvenile field that there ever has been. I'm just not. I think that he'll be able to get the distance. And you're very well. I mean, last year we saw Citizen Bull in a race where there was supposed to be this crazy pace that could have possibly set up for, we had East Avenue that didn't break. It could have possibly set up for Chancellor, all of these dynamics. And in the end, the Baffert Speed Horse got to the lead and wired him. That's a huge question mark for Brant. Can he do that? This is, as we mentioned earlier with the Fillies, in the last 5 years, Baffert is unsuccessful with stretching horses out in the Breeders' Cup. He's winless. I'm not sure how many horses I believe it's like 3 or 4 horses at least in the past 5 years, according to Formulator, that he just hasn't been successful in stretching them out. And it's interesting because Baffert's not afraid to run his horses. The fact that he hasn't tried him at 2 turns yet it's just odd to me. He's not afraid to run them. And usually he does get 2 turns, and then before he eventually sends them to the Breeders' Cup. So I think that it's kind of strange to me. He hasn't run since September the 7th. He's been obviously those 6 furlong typical Baffert drills, trying to race him, in the mornings, get him fit as a fiddle and making sure that they're like gel ignite when they get to the races and they're ready to use that speed. I have a lot of questions about him. To me, he just doesn't fit the profile, especially with this being his first 2-turn test of a horse that I want to take at a short price to beat a horse like Ted. I will talk about a long shot that I actually almost thought about using to beat Ted, but I decided to kind of come down to earth a little bit. And that was the number 1 Intrepido, who I loved his last race. I don't think that he was running against some world beaters. Desert Gate, he was scratched out of this race, but he ran so well that day. He was pinballed in between horses. He got into traffic. He almost looked like he wasn't going to be able to get out of traffic, and he managed to prevail as a long shot that day. This is going to be, a fun story for the Jeff Mullins team, who hasn't had a Breeders' Cup starter, I think, since 04, 05, like a long time, over 20 years. And you'll see here where he finds trouble. I don't know if you can scroll into like the stretch run where he was really into trouble. He's kind of trying to find room and make it out. He's obviously the number 2. We're back to normal world saddles. You see, he's just he's in between horses throughout the entire running of this race. This is a horse that has some stride to him as well. So that's not a comfortable position to race in. And he did so throughout the entirety of this race, sitting off of quicker fractions. And again, it's going to be more exaggerated as he tries to find a way out into the stretch, which he does. He's trying to find a way out. Mike Smith won't let him. He's trying. He finally is able to make his way out. And he honestly wasn't traveling like the winner here. He just grinding. But Baffert wins this race. And then all of a sudden, he just, right here, you'll see it. He just explodes and really has that late turn of foot. That's just honestly kind of like a turf horse, not exactly like a turf horse, but he just exploded in the stretch. And I think that if he can get faster, which he does have to get substantially faster, I thought he was really, really interesting. I almost used him on top. I went ahead and put him second in this field, but I think that he's incredibly interesting with the right step forward. He's a progressive 2-year-old, getting faster and faster with each race. And I thought that at a price, sign me up.
I completely agree, Jackson. I'll turn it over to you. To me, Brandt is either you use him as a win candidate or he's out of the trifecta. I don't see him as a horse that, if he looks another horse in the eye, I don't know that I see that kind of, the fight that we've seen from Intrepido or the progression that we've seen from Blackout Time in continually getting better, I should say, where Brandt might have that feel of just an all or nothing type horse. I don't know your thoughts on him.
I don't know if I'd agree with that. I just think he's the second best horse going in this race, and he's going to have the lead. I just don't see a scenario where he's not having things his own way up front, whether he's going very, very fast or they slow it down like they did last year. I think he's going to run well. It's just a matter of does someone come catch him. Intrepido, I wish this race was not a Del Mar because, as we've talked about on other shows, Ryan, it's very, very difficult to close in the stretch at Del Mar, going these 2-turn races. And he strikes me as more of a grinder, as we saw in the American Pharoah. Once he got out, because he got out top of the stretch, and it took him the length of the stretch to get going again. And I think at this track, if that happens again, he's going to have a tough time passing the likes of Ted Nafi and Brandt in this race. So I do like him quite a bit underneath. I just feel like he's more the horse that's going to split the try rather than beat both of these big favorites.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all. I'm all Intrepido and Blackout Time underneath Ted Nafi. I'll probably toss Brandt out of there. Just try and spice things up a little bit. I think you should get some good returns if you use the 1 and the 2 in Blackout Time and Intrepido and, get the clear second choice in Brandt out of there. I don't think we have too many other horses to speak about in this race, so I think we'll move on to Friday. Meg, obviously your pick is going to be Ted Nafi, as you said, with Intrepido underneath. Jackson, I assume the panel is on Ted Nafi in this spot.
I guess I would pick Brandt, but it's like 51-49. It's fair.
Spice it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this guy getting Okay, and taking the $3 million horse. Just
I'm a
trying to
sucker for any
shoot.
speed horse. I know this. Come on.
You are.
He's
Yeah,
gonna be in front.
you are an absolute sucker.
Speed kills at Del Mar. I will
You say
say
the word.
that. So.
You say the word loose lead, and Jackson's ears perk up like there's Zenyatta turning for home. So we'll move on to the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. 5 furlongs on Saturday, going as race number 5 on Saturday. I already said that. 5 furlongs over the grass. Post positions came out yesterday. Matorius drew the rail. He broke from post. He broke from the rail yet last year in this race while wearing saddlecloth number 2 because there was a scratch of the number 1 in there. Meg, how'd you see this race? Last year, both turf sprints, both the juvenile and for the olders on Saturday, both won by post positions 1 through 4, with the exactas also being from post positions 1 through 4. Who'd you like in this race as it approaches just a few days away?
It's kind of funny because, when you're handicapping turf sprints, maybe at Saratoga, you kind of downgrade the inside post a little bit. It's like you kind of want to get out. You have a little bit of room on the outside to make your run as far as those turf sprints are played. I love playing turf sprints, especially high level turf sprints, because they're just the perfect volatile space to provide an upset, to launch an upset. And I think that this could be the time to really dig in and try to find one. I am kind of become an East Coast homer, so I've got a little bit of affinity for the likes of the number 5 Bring the Band Home. And I know a lot of critics of this are going to say he is a horse that needs the lead. He might be better going 5.5. I forgive his effort last time out. It wasn't his day. It was not. He just didn't look the same, honestly, that day up at Woodbine. I'm willing to forgive that. He just looked so incredible over the summer at Saratoga. I mean, set quick fractions. I mean, he was just so fast, so impressive visually. He looked incredible the times I got to see this horse. So I'm very intrigued by him. I also have a lot of interest in AG Bullet, and I know that everybody and their mother will. She's incredibly fast. She is also going to I also have my issues with Bring the Band Home because I feel like he needs to get to the lead and sustain that run. And that's his way of running. That's his way of thinking. He's not exactly the most reliable type as far as not being able to assume position on the lead. But AG Bullet, I think we're looking at the striper. You read my mind. Yes. But you'll see her here. I just love that she has so much speed. She doesn't need to get to the lead. You'll see her pressing just off of the likes of a very speedy Coppola there that day, going to 5.5 furlongs. And I just find her to be extremely formidable, being able to break well, go forward, and make her run. That's just what's made her so good in the past and what makes her a solid contender in this race. And she just runs so well this day. I believe there was some give in the ground. As far as that was concerned, there was some rain that week for sure. But she pulls away like the champ she is. And she's a filly that you can really rely upon. Last time out in the ladies turf sprint at Kentucky Downs, she managed to get the best of a good group as well. A pretty good group, I say. I mean, Simply in Front came back to win routing in her next start. But, as far as prices and playing these turf sprints are concerned, I feel like they always surprise me, especially in the way the dynamics play out and the speeds and who decides to go, especially from the European contingency. I know Kadim is going to be a horse that... to me, I know he won the Woodford last out. That wasn't a field that really made me all that excited. He's going to be a price. He would be the oldest horse ever to win a Breeders' Cup race. He's 9 years old. I mean, this horse has been winning since 2018. And he could very well come up and spice things up. I wasn't a huge fan of him. As far as coming out of the Woodford in particular, I would remember being in the paddock for that race actually that day with Kaylee Shapiro, who picked this horse, and she said she just looked incredible. He just looked muscle on muscle better than those, pound for pound better than that particular field that day. And I went with others at a price. I know I've heard some chatter about this horse as far as, potential in this race, and I wasn't a huge fan of him. And I wasn't exactly a huge proponent of the 3-year-olds that are trying to be elder. So I've kind of found myself landing amongst a horse like AG Bullet, who has just provided such consistency. I thought that the number 5, Bring the Band Home, could trip out and do well, especially if he can run as quick. And the 5 furlongs is sharp for him, though. That's a question mark that I have, especially with turf sprinters. There's that perfect sweet spot for them, and 5 might just be a little bit too sharp for him. Totally understand the argument there But I do believe him to be, if he can return to that Saratoga form, I thought he was just so incredibly interesting at a juicy price. And this race, though, turf sprints are, they're just, I think sometimes people sit back and especially last year, I thought Cogburn being such a short price was an abomination. Yes, he was the fastest. I mean, he was incredibly fast over the summer, but to be able, I think, to bet a horse down to that kind of favoritism in a turf sprint of quality turf sprinters from around the world was just insane to me. And I like to go price hunting in these types of races. So we shall see how it plays out.
I don't blame you there. I also do my fair share of price shopping in these 5 furlong races. And you mentioned a really good point. Turf sprints, they're run at all different lengths throughout the country. And every horse has a different kind of specialty for that turf sprint. A horse like Coppola, who we saw in the Jaipur, this is a random example, but 5 furlongs is his sweet spot. 5 furlongs, his sweet spot. You put that horse at 5 furlongs, I mean, mainly at Gulfstream Park, but he did some damage elsewhere.
Gulfstream Park horse, yeah.
It is Gulfstream Park, but 5 furlongs was his playground. 5.5, 6, he had no shot. A horse like Cogburn, like we saw, 5 furlongs, a little bit too short. You get the 5.5, or if that race was, if the Breeders' Cup was, up at Belmont Park and they were going 6 furlongs in the turf sprint, it might be a completely different story. You really have to handicap based on a horse's strength at that distance, because that extra half a furlong and certainly the extra furlong, those 3 races are run completely differently. Just in the way the race shapes up, how fast they go early. 5 furlongs, we'll probably see 21 flat, I would imagine. We haven't had a whole lot of rain up here, not a whole lot of moisture. The turf is gonna be very, very firm. Jackson, what are your thoughts on the 5 furlong specialist angle when it comes to these turf sprints at Del Mar?
Yeah, and the turf's going to be very, very green, according to Mr. Ryan Anderson, from what I've been hearing.
Yeah, very green.
It definitely takes a certain type of horse to run the 5, to excel going 5 furlongs, and that's why I think you want to look at horses in this race that are proven over it. And I landed an AG Bullet as well. I was hoping to bet a Filly against the boys daily double until Copian drew the rail in the next race, but we'll leave that for another day. Look, I feel like she's the most reliable horse in the race. She runs well every single time. She does not need to lead, as we saw last year in the turf sprint, where she ran arguably the best race of her life from way off the pace and kind of made that first move to try to break the race open once Cogburn opened up a huge lead. And she ran really well in that spot. Nothing she's done this year, dissuades me from thinking she can't run well again. And I think she drew really well outside of the other main speeds drawn in post 5 and 6. So she's the safest option for me. I think 4-1 is more than fair. I also agree with Megan on the 5. I think bring the band home is kind of interesting. The worry with him is both of those races at Saratoga, I think we covered them both. There was just no speed in them, and that's why he got bet so big. Yeah. Especially in the Harvey Pack, he was like 15-1, maybe 10-1 more in line, and just got hammered and romped. And then we saw what happened at Woodbine, that he finally got some pressure, and he was terrible.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, but at 12-1. I feel like I might be willing to ignore all that, because that's just such a big price, and he was so damn good. Those races 2 and 3 back, it might be worth a little swing. So those are the 2 I'm looking at.
I thought about the speed of this race. How do you find? I think AG Bullet doesn't necessarily need the lead. We know Bear River will be quick, but who is quicker than Bring the Band Home in this race?
I don't know. If She's So Spicy is not gunning for the front, then why are you shipping her out here? That she's got.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
I would also say if there was a scratch in this race and Puro Magic were to draw in, Puro Magic would be up in that top kind of vanguard as they go. And I think there's going to be a lot of pace pressure in here. There always is, going 5 furlongs. Even last year, we saw Cogburn's early speed. Cogburn was pressed through that first quarter, and eventually Irad really stepped on the gas going into the far turn. And
you didn't see him.
I don't necessarily blame him for that. Get that separation as the heavy favorite, as the best horse in the race, and just try and hang on. But again, 5 furlongs, it's tough to do that, and ultimately that did him in. So I think there is a lot of pace in here, and there always is going these 5 furlong distances. Governor Sam showed a new ability throughout this season. Obviously, as a 2-year-old, he was very much a kind of speedball type, and then since then he's matured and been able to rate that speed a little bit. He's not quite the runoff type, so I think he's a little bit interesting to me, especially with Flavian Pratt taking the booking at 15-1. You want to see him save that ground. Kadem, as much as I liked him at Keeneland, I did have him in the Woodford. I don't like him at 5 furlongs. Arizona Blaze is one that keeps kind of drawing my eye. And obviously, I have a lot of love for Motorius down on the rail. I won't be excluding him from any of my tickets, as that horse drew perfectly from the one post, in my opinion. Arizona Blaze also drew really well, though. Ran second in this race last year behind Magnum Force. Both of those horses saved a ton of ground in the duration of the running of that juvenile turf sprint. We had Emmett Kennedy and Davey Lane on either the HHH Racing podcast, and then I had Emmett Kennedy on mine. He said the European sprinters are trash. He said they're bad. Irish champion or British Champions Day at Ascot a couple weeks ago, the turf sprints were won by 200-1 and 100-1 shots. So that goes to show the kind of consistency that you have throughout that division. However, Arizona Blaze went to Irish Champions weekend and managed to get a good win over a very soft 5 furlong course. But that's going to help with that foundation. I think coming back to a turf where he is familiar, he's heard his feet rattle on this ground before, and he's run very well. He drew really favorably again, in my opinion. You get 5-1. David Egan is going to keep the mount aboard. I want to see how this horse runs, and I think 5-1 is fair. I hope he doesn't get bet too heavily, but I certainly think this was one that could factor in a big way late, especially given the presence of so much pace.
Do you really like the rail for the one horse?
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a big problem.
Really? I just don't think it matters. He drew the rail last year, and he was absolutely fine. He's going to save the ground, and in every turf sprint, that's okay. That's kind of the problem with Del Mar, is you need to save ground to win, but then you also need to get lucky and not find trouble. But you kind of have to rely on Matthew DeSantis' adage, death taxes and North American jockeys will always leave the rail open, because someone is going to get that gap. I'm going to hope it's Motorius. It's probably the least likely, because he's going to be coming from the farthest back. So someone might get that split before him, but he also loves this turf course. So I got to give him the love. And I do think the one post is going to, it'll be no problem for him to save the ground. He's just going to need a few things to go his way. I don't want to put him as a single or a strong A, because taking a short price in a turf sprint, especially drawing the rail, is still a little volatile, as Meg mentioned. But I certainly think he's a strong A candidate for me. But I'd probably put Arizona Blaze maybe just a tick above him.
Yeah, I just think the difference between this year and last year is last year all the speed was drawn in post 9, 10, 11, whereas this year it's drawn much more towards the middle. They're going to all come over on him because he was not last year. He was more mid-pack. He's going to be last this year based on where everyone else is breaking into his outside. Even the 2 Reef Runner, as we saw this summer, Del Mar is the one that came over and sent him back to the last in the Green Flash. So he's going to have to do some things differently, I think, than he did last year.
That's true.
Yeah, a huge problem for me about Motorius was his draw, and the fact that he's a 7-year-old, and the fact that, I mean, obviously there's some older runners in here. He's in good form. I just, he got a lot of chances last year to kind of get into that best Breeders' Cup form, if that makes sense. He was more seasoned last year. He had a little bit more to him. And this year they've campaigned him. He's just had 2 starts this year. He got a late start in June. He's a horse that at 7 years old, is he going to be able to bring his best off of that light of a campaign now drawing the rail in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint? I get it. I understand why, he's run 2 great. There's nothing against him. I agree with your points, Ryan. But I just was a little bit hesitant about him. I totally understand the case for him. I just feel like when looking, especially with a horse like this, just the profile of a horse that we know he's going to be fine at the 5 furlongs. I feel like that's kind of where he's done his better running. But closing sprinters, drawing the rail, not usually my favorite angle. Especially with some of the speeds that he's going to face in this race. I think he's going to have a decent pace. Obviously, we talked about that. But I agree with your points. I have some questions about him. And trust me, I'm sure I'll look back at this race, really liking bring the band home, and he's going to get to the lead and probably not run as fast at Del Mar. We'll see what happens. But I thought that's just kind of the play that's so fun about turf sprints, especially this caliber turf sprints. I agree with you about the Europeans. I'm not very excited about any of them. And in a way, there's not always a perfect argument, because if there's a perfect argument, you'd be betting at 5-2 or 2-1. So I think that's kind of where you find yourself as a player is trying to negotiate a case for a price and kind of trying to make ways to make it a little bit more profitable. Because if you go through the Breeders' Cup and you pick the top two choices in every race, you're probably not going to come out on top. And I think, learning from, especially from, somebody like Andy Sterling and being able to watch him make betting decisions and watch him play and all those kinds of things in handicap races, you're just not going to win by betting the favorite every time. And I think that that's kind of it's the discourse, and it's what we all strive to do, especially in these kinds of races, is trying to find places where you can go elsewhere for sure.
Exactly. It's all about finding that value. And last year, Motorius was 12-1. You're not going to get that this year. So you're going to get 7-2. He's going to be likely the clear second choice in a race like this. And if not even the favorite. So I would say that's probably too short in a race as volatile as this. You want to look for those horses that are maybe getting forgotten about. You can make a case for every one of these runners, except for, pretty much every one of these runners. So turf sprints, very volatile. And of course, emphasis on saving ground, but also you got to get the split. You got to get lucky, and you got to have the right horse jockey to get there in time. That's going to be the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. And now it's time for the Breeders' Cup Classic. I've been looking forward to this one. This one, I don't need to do too much talking because I know my co-host and our guest, Megan Burgess, have been just waiting to talk about this one. You heard us in all of our previous shows. We talked about all the, those top contenders, the top three in this race last year, the top three in the Derby. We're not going to start with those in this show. We're going to start with the number 8 Mindframe. We gotta settle this. We gotta let you guys throw this thing down. Meg, I'll let you take the floor first. Coming out of the Jockey Club Gold Cup, where lost the rider, lost Irad Ortiz, starting out in that race, but obviously a very nice horse, and one that's done very, very little wrong.
The thing about Mindframe with me, my love affair, first of all, he's 10-1 on the morning line. Give me him all day long, sovereignty or not. I really hope Sovereignty ends up running in this race. I do. I really do. I think it would be, my heart goes out to any trainer that has to deal with something like that, especially when you have the Kentucky Derby winner and arguably one of the best horses on the planet spiking a fever today. It was reported he's not yet scratched, but he is not 100% for the Breeders' Cup Classic. And that's absolutely the most gutting news for any connection, especially with a kind of horse of this caliber. So I'm hoping, it's kind of one of those things that now when you look at it in terms of Sovereignty, obviously we'll get to Mindframe in a moment. It's if they do run him and he's not his best, it's going to come back to this. So it's one of those things where if they do run him, it's just such a challenging situation now if he does run in this race, because if he is not 110%, it's going to come back to the fact that maybe he wasn't 100%, and that's not something that anybody would want. So Belmont's one of the best horsemen on this planet. Godolphin is the best. He is run by the best horseman on the planet. So if he does run, I do believe he is going to be able to win this race. I in my gut, I don't. Knowing that now, I don't know if he will run. I have no idea what will happen. We will see tomorrow and as the week progresses, and I don't want to speculate. But now that that's a question, now that he has spiked a fever, in my mind, we'll see what happens moving forward. But with the number 8 Mindframe, I just have such a love for this horse. I think that if it was any other year, I think we would be having a very different conversation with him. And the fact that we get 10-1 on the morning line and he's going to be able to be a healthier price is all the more exciting. Obviously, take a line through the Jockey Club Gold Cup. We know what happens there. We'll move on from that. But as I mentioned earlier, and he's a winner at 7 furlongs in a Grade 1, and one of arguably the best runnings of the Churchill Downs that we have seen, turned around in a very good group. And while I agree with what Jackson's about to say about his trip into Stephen Foster, he managed to prevail. Sierra Leone is a quirky horse that needs things to go his way, and he does have a rabbit in this race. And I love Sierra Leone. I'm a Sierra Leone fan all the way. I love the horse. He's a gorgeous physical. But in terms of Mindframe, I just don't think that we've seen the best of this horse. He's, to me, a generational type talent. And he's one that we haven't seen the bottom of. And it's just so interesting to me. A tactical horse is going to get the jump on the likes of Sierra Leone. I think he's going to be obviously in front of Journalism. Antiquarian will kind of be one of those tactical sorts there with him, I think, in similar position. And I also think that he's got Forever Young to contend with. This is an incredibly strong race. But in my mind, he is a tactical sort that stalks. He's going to have a really nice pace setup. Fierceness is going to go. We know contrary thinking is going to be there. And Chad Brown said it earlier today when the folks were talking to him on, as far as the decision to run the rabbit and the controversy. And he said he's not doing it to aggravate people. He just wants it. He just wants an honest pace. And to be quite frank, there really wasn't an honest pace in this race, with Fierceness likely being able to get to the front end. And Mindframe has speed too. He's not going to dilly-dally. I think he's just such a tactical, handy sort of a horse. He's a dream type of horse to me, especially at the price you're going to get on him. And while we haven't seen the bottom of him yet, we know that, look at him last year, his form, he was so green. He probably wasn't even ready at all to be in those races, but on raw ability and talent, he was able to run the kinds of races he did in the Belmont and in the Haskell. And to be able to know that I do believe he can get this mile and a quarter distance. So I'm Mindframe all the way, even if Sovereignty does run in this race. If Sovereignty does not run in this race, I'm still on Mindframe. I'm excited about the potential price I'm going to fetch on him. And like I said, I just don't think we've seen the bottom of him. I think that he's going to get the right kind of trip. He breaks well. Irad Ortiz knows him, obviously fits him like a glove, and maybe a little bit of a redemption tour on what we could have seen in Saratoga. We shall see, but I'm just really, really excited about him and hoping that he can kind of show us what that kind of, I don't think he's really had a coming out party of what we can really see from him. And I'm excited to hopefully see him take a step in the right direction.
I'm a fan of Mindframe. I don't know that I want him to win in this spot. I think Sovereignty has looked like a man among boys this week. And I was not on this Sovereignty bandwagon coming into the week. I was trying to find every reason to beat this horse, as much as I respect the 3-year-old.
And then you saw him. Yeah,
and then
that's
I saw
what happens.
And
Yeah.
He looks massive. And the brain on him, you can tell when I saw him, just have in a light canter around the track. He clearly wanted to do more, but he listened to his rider in the morning and he knew that, okay, I can't go. I'm not going too hard. Like, I have to do this. This is what I'm supposed to do. Then he was allowed to work, and he finally kind of let himself, get into his stride a little bit. And he looks so professional in everything he does. And he's grown up so much throughout this year that I struggle to try and beat him. To your point on, if he runs with the fever, or not with the fever, but if he runs after this news comes out, it'll all come back to that. I have to trust Belmont, and you mentioned one of the greatest horsemen, and rightfully so. If he runs in this race, he's 100%. And if he wins, I'm sure some people are going to say like this was his MJ flu game or whatever. But
yeah,
either way, I trust that if he's in the gate, he's 100% and he's going to run. But they're going to do what's right by the horse. And I know we all want to see him run. So we can't speculate on anything. We'll just see how things pan out. But to your point on Mindframe, he's done very little wrong. His only race that he hasn't hit the board was last time out. And he has a very, very reasonable excuse in that race. So to see him stretch out to 10 furlongs in this one, I'm interested to see how that goes. Jackson, I got to turn it over to you now to talk about Mindframe and to talk about the Breeders' Cup Classic. As I know you've been patiently waiting your turn. And I'm just going to go ahead and throw up the stretch run from the Belmont Stakes in that year, just because, we got to see it was, oh man, he got hit by the crop and he went the wrong way. He didn't get tired.
He got tired. He got tired of that race, and he got tired of the race after that in Haskell. And look, I don't think he wants to go 10 furlongs against the best of the best. And make no mistakes, this is the best of the best. I will say, I think if there's any track he can probably get at 10 furlongs, it is Del Mar, because it's just not run like a true mile and a quarter. We've talked about this before. There's been 14 mile and a quarter races the past 10 years at Del Mar, and 13 of the 14 winners had the lead turning for home. And when I'm thinking about this race, about who was most likely to be leading, turning for home, it's either him or Fierceness, because it's not going to be Sierra Leone. If Sierra Leone wins this race, it's going to be way out the clouds. It's not going to be the pace it was last year, where he's going to be able to make that early move. He's going to have to grind it out. Obviously, Sovereignty is up in that conversation too. Who knows if he's running at this point? But if Fierceness doesn't show up, which he's been known to do here and there, Mindframe might be in that position turning for home. And in that situation, I could see him maybe blowing this thing up. I'm not betting him. I'm not as bullish against him as I was in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, though. especially if Sovereignty doesn't run, because then that's just going to, I mean, I don't even know. If Sovereignty doesn't run, I have no idea how they're going to bet this race. Like, it's just going to completely shake it up. You might have, Forever Young might be like 5-2 after all that. So who knows what's going to happen.
We're going to have all of these guests on again and talk about the Classic if that's the case. So obviously I hope he runs, because I don't think I'm going to have a voice left. All that to say, Meg, we'll turn it to you. Your final thoughts on the Breeders' Cup Classic to be run this Saturday. And is there a race that we have not spoken about that you have a very strong opinion in?
Yeah, I mean, I really do hope that, Sovereignty, maybe this is just a little bit of a shipping thing, and he got there, spiked a fever, and he'll hopefully be able to run in this race. I don't wish that on anyone, and obviously run by the best horseman in the world, the best team, the Breeders' Cup, everybody, only looking out for the best interest of all of their participants. So I'm very excited to see this race play out, and I'm really, fingers crossed, hoping that, we get to see this incredible rendition with Sovereignty involved. But we shall see how that plays out. Honestly, I've been very much against fierceness for a long time, and I am not as much against fierceness anymore. I thought last time in the Pacific Classic was a huge race for him, and he does draw the rail, and we saw, of course, Todd Fletcher, I don't want the rail, and I don't want to think about it, and then he draws the rail. I know. But he overcame situations last time out at this 1.25 mile distance at Del Mar that I think that he's going to be I think that, he could very much get back on the redemption tour that was essentially this year of him trying to get back to this race. And he ran incredible in this race last year. He loves Del Mar. He's going to be one of the shorter prices, I do believe, of this group. And it's definitely not a group where you want to accept too short of a price. But I thought he was incredibly interesting. I would put him over Sierra Leone in this race. And I know that's not something I think I have ever said when it comes to these two horses. Sierra Leone, I think Sierra Leone ran an incredible race in the Whitney. I've watched this horse all summer. I've watched this horse constantly. I've watched this horse into the Kentucky Derby. I love him. I have my question marks about the kind of trip he gets at Del Mar at 1.25 miles, closing off of the kinds of animals that are going to be in front of him. Contrary thinking, I don't have any problem with the rabbit running. I think that they've done it across Europe countless amounts of times, and it's no issue. It's done all of the time. It's actually a much more normal practice in the grand scheme of global racing than I think people realize. And I don't really find it to be a huge issue in my mind. I think it's going to benefit. It's not just benefiting that animal. It's not just benefiting him. It's benefiting many. But I think Mike Rapoli does win the Breeders' Cup Classic this year. With either Mind Frame or Fierceness, and we will see. We'll see how it shakes out. But I do find that that's my opinion on the Breeders' Cup Classic. I am very excited about the Breeders' Cup Turf this year. I'll give a shout out. I'm a sheets player, so I kind of like to go. I don't like to get too caught up in them, but I also kind of like to take a look at some of the European horses, especially ones that I'm maybe not as acutely familiar with. And while I was really on Minnie Hawk, we know the Fillies record in the Breeders' Cup Turf. She's a 3-year-old filly going up against Rebels Romance, and he's a 7-year-old. He's going to be a short price. I was very interested in betting Minnie in this race, but I do feel as if she's kind of a horse, and Aidan O'Brien has talked about this a little bit. She kind of does what is necessary. She grinds along and she kind of does what is necessary. And that was kind of a question mark they had with her when she was a bit younger. I'm not so sure of her in this race having to go against a horse like Rebels Romance. So I'm pretty excited to see how that turns out. But that's just kind of an assumption and kind of something that a little nugget that I kind of went through in my head as I was handicapping these races was I was really interested in Minnie. I almost kind of wanted to use her, but at the same time, I have my question marks there. I think that that's going to be a really competitive race. I'm really sad that we didn't get more European participation for maybe a horse like Ombudsman, maybe some of those bigger horses in Europe. I was kind of saddened by that. I think it came up a little light in the grand scheme of things when you really think about it. But in terms of Minnie, she's definitely a horse that they pre-entered for the Filly and Mare Turf, and they decided to run her against the boys. So we'll see how that shakes out for her, if she's able to kind of make history in that way, and see if she's that good. The jury's still out. We'll see how it plays out. But I do trust Aiden O'Brien. That is one thing for sure.
Yeah, you can always trust an AOB, and Minnie Hawk, it seems to be a very special filly. Megan, I can't thank you enough for all the time and all of the expertise that you gave us. Best of luck this weekend. Can't wait to see you on TV at America's Day at the Races, on Big Fox, on Fox 1, on Fox 2, on Fox 4, 5, 6, all the way through.
Not that many.
Channels.
Thank you.
However many they have now. Thank you for your time, Meg. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. And Jackson, thanks for not giving me too hard of a time about fierceness. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, mind frame.
Mind frame. All right.
Alrighty, guys.
For
Thank
Megan
you.
Burgess, for Jackson Muniz, I'm Ryan Anderson. We will see you in about 15 seconds on the same channel with Tony Kalo. We'll see you in a bit.
Bye, Tony. I love you, Tony.